So for this module we're talking total quality service, and I wanted to explain how this concept came about. I suppose it goes actually back to World War II when a fellow called Dr. W. Edwards Deming was sent to Japan to help the Japanese recover from the war. And Deming came up with a set of beliefs that proved instrumental in actually putting the Japanese on a very successful track that's still running today, as a matter of fact. So these beliefs involved psychology, and Deming's thought was that everybody wants to succeed. So people innately wish to succeed, and the job of managers is to sort of get out of their way and let them succeed. And this ties into the service mentality that we need people to have. The second part of Deming's beliefs dealt with systems, and that organizations should be structured from the ground up, all geared towards the corporate vision. And the vision, of course, goes back to strategic planning. So, in other words, every aspect and every department should be structured toward that vision. And not many organizations can actually say this. They don't think that holistically and how everything connects to one common purpose. The third part dealt with perceptual framework, and that all staff should have the same framework. In other words, once you've got your systems in place, all of your staff need to know what that vision is, and they all need to be working towards it. So from their job descriptions to the way that they actually function in their job, the way they're trained, the way you hire, that perceptual framework should permeate your organization from the ground up. The fourth one is causes of variance, and Deming's belief was that if there's a problem with an organization, it's management's fault. Don't blame your staff. And I've certainly come to believe this in my career, that if, for example, if your service staff could be, the best trained and have the best personalities in the world, but if your food quality is not up to par, good service isn't going to happen, because in the minds of your customers, good service without quality isn't enough. So if you want to use sort of a gross example, if somebody finds a finger in their soup, it doesn't matter how good your server is, the problem is going to be the perception that there's something wrong with the restaurant. So causes of variance are typically in the hands of managers. So the whole point of total quality service is that you don't start your service with staff, you start it with management, and management has to get all of the organization functioning very well, and then of course your well-trained staff can come in. But quite often managers think that a staff training session for good service is what needs to happen. And of course the whole thesis of total quality service is that you start with management, you make sure the organization is sound and that your structures are sound and that there aren't any causes of variance that managers can control that are going to screw up the efforts of your service staff. So out of Deming's beliefs came 9 total quality service principles, and these deal with things like plotting critical service incidents. So for example, if you have someone calling into your receptionist, no matter what the question is or the issue is or the problem is that that person has, your staff should all know exactly how to handle it and exactly where to send it, so that the communication with that customer is seamless. So if you plot this, for example, if someone's calling into a golf club and they want to deal with the golf shop, of course we know where to send it there. But if they've got a problem that pertains to something else, the receptionist is trained to know exactly how to deal with that call. And this, of course, goes from once the receptionist hands it off, once it gets to the golf shop, if the golfer or guest questions change, then that person knows how to deal with it and how to hand it off if need be, not with things like, geez, I don't know the answer to that, not quite sure what to do. So you need to plot your critical service incidents and try to anticipate virtually every question, issue, problem that a customer may have, and train your staff to deal with those. Hiring rate is huge. Some people just have a better service attitude than other people. We all know this. Some people listen well. They want to work with people. They like to communicate. They speak well. They establish rapport well. So you want to hire right from the beginning. Now, if you have staff that's already in your organization, you can't be just going around firing people, of course. Then you need to train. But if you hire right from the beginning, that certainly solves a lot of the problems. Another aspect of total quality service is research into your golfers' and guests' needs, and these evolve all the time. If you know what their needs are and what their psychographics are, what the psychology is, then you can of course plan your service to meet their needs much better. If you don't understand your golfer and guest expectations, then it's pretty much impossible to meet them because you're shooting in the dark. There's also training, of course I mentioned earlier, and this should start with your managers. The whole thing about service is that it has to be a philosophy. It's the values. It's got to be modeled right from the top. So your managers need to be trained. They need to live service, and your staff all need to see that managers are living the service. And when they know that managers do it themselves and that they expect it, and that this is part of the corporate culture and the corporate philosophy, then staff find it much easier to get on board because they know that this is a living, breathing entity at your club. So in summation, service isn't smiling. It's got to go much, much deeper than that. You don't just train your staff to smile and be nice to people. That's just the end result. If you've done your training well, of course, they should be smiling. But service starts with management, and you need to really look at it holistically and systematically. And this is what a lot of organizations don't do. They start at the end with training. So I think the chapter and the PowerPoint show will make this case quite well. And it's not impossible to instill an excellent service culture into organizations, but very few companies do it. Hopefully yours will be one. Now on to the PowerPoint and chapter. Talk to you next module.